Welcome everybody, this is SharePoint Patterns and Practices Community Call June 2017 edition. I think we're hitting 2.5 years doing monthly community calls for SharePoint PnP. And actually the community has been growing significantly within this past 2.5 years, which is pretty awesome. So let's actually start immediately going quickly on today's agenda. So typical agenda for monthly community call, we have a pretty tight schedule. So we have a lot of stuff to actually go through, or I'll go through quickly the monthly highlights. And after that, we'll have 3 different demos. One from Alex, one from Ron, and one from Frank Cornu. So I'll try to be fast. I'm going through the summary, and after that we can actually concentrate on the demos, what the guys are doing. Like typically monthly community calls are mainly us presenting and having those community calls, so this is not really the main location to have Q&A time or have questions with audio and iron window. We can absolutely have a discussion in the iron window, but if you have specific questions around whatever topics, we would recommend to join on the special interest group calls, which are happening weekly basis as well, where we always have a time for additional questions and answers. Good. So let's actually get ongoing on the monthly summary. So PnP webcasts and videos. So this month or the May, we had quite a few videos again on the weekly webcasts. I'll just pinpoint some of these. So one of my favorites is from 8th of May, which is no doubt, I mentioned this quite a few times, but it's one of those holy grail scenarios within the SharePoint Online. So how can you securely call a secured API using JavaScript and then, for example, get access on-premises data? And there's a great new guidance article around that one as well, available in the dev.ops.com/SharePoint. So showing how to actually make that happen, written by Waldek Mastercards. We did a SharePoint Modern User Interface Experience Scanner, so you can actually analyze which of your UIs are available for the modern experiences, which of them are not doing that. We did a introduction to Visual Studio extensions for SharePoint Framework, which is a great extension, community-driven extension, coordinated by Eric Chubb and Paul Schefferlane, which is enabling the SPFX solution creation in Visual Studio 2015 and 2017. Common misconceptions about SharePoint Framework together with Waldek Mastercards. That was more around kind of, let's say, classic statements around SharePoint Framework, which are not quite true. So we were kind of pinpointing, I think, 3 specific topics, and I had a discussion on them. Transforming customization to SharePoint Online, classic update story with Erwin van Hoonen. We have a lot of transformation guidance in the PnP because the PnP originates actually from the transformation efforts. But then we wanted to do a quick kind of a refresh on that content as well. And then this Monday, we released yesterday, today is Tuesday, we released the introduction to SharePoint Framework extensions. So that was more around showing how the SharePoint Framework extensions work, what they actually do, how to do debugging and all of that. So really good webcast as well together with Waldek. Now, on the May kind of a metrics, I'll be relatively fast on this as well, like I always try to be. But in May 2017, we have a quite significant growth again on the PnP component usage. So our unique tenants, which are using PnP PowerShell or PnP CSM Core, went up 17% to 5,752. There was 2.9 billion, and it is actually billion, not million HTTP requests going through the PnP components, and that's an increase of 41%. So essentially what it means is that those tenants and customers who've been using PnP in the past are using more and more PnP as well. In a GitHub, we had a 23,600 unique visitors within the past, on average, on the last 2 weeks. And then we had 123,000 views in the GitHub as well. Most used capability, once again, it's always the story, is the provisioning engine, which was used by 1,516 tenants. So quite a significant growth on the on the numbers as well. During the springtime, the numbers have been growing quite significantly in every single month, except I think it was April when we slightly dropped, but that was across everything in the cloud, probably because of spring breaks and all of vacations and all of that. Top 5 countries based on tenant numbers. Australia has now popped in a top 5. So whoever in Australia, well, the numbers are pretty high on the usage anyway, but Australia is now catching up on the EMEA and US on the usage. And then on the top 5 countries based on requests, Norway suddenly jumped as a number 3 on the list in May 2017. And it seems to be actually the case even in June. So Norway, due reasons or another, they are increasing the usage quite significantly. Good. And I do not have statistics on Paul's question around who actually left top 5. If I remember correctly, it was Sweden from the both lists, which was actually dropped from them. But most viewed samples, top 15. This is kind of an interesting data for us in SharePoint engineering to understand what kind of samples people are actually using and accessing on the GitHub, which are available. And the responsive UI package is still number 1. It's been number 1 for a year. So people are essentially looking into enabling the classic SharePoint UIs to be responsive. Just a bit of a warning for those who are not super familiar with this one. It's not a 100% match. It doesn't magically do everything for you, but it's working pretty decently, and we know that a lot of tenants are using that as well. Core components are used quite a lot. A lot of increase in the SharePoint Framework WebParts, which is a good thing because the SharePoint Framework WebParts samples and WebParts are the model in the future in SharePoint Online, and also landing in on-premises as part of the feature pack 2 for SharePoint 2016. And then there's quite a few kind of a classic guys like MimSync and remote event receivers on a list as well. But there is a clear kind of a visibility on the modern capabilities being accessed and viewed more, which indicates that people are adapting on the modern customization story. Total sample view in GitHub was roughly 51,000 views. Which is a pretty decent number as well. It is actually a pretty amazing number, to be honest. In general, kind of a classic slide, what we do always in a monthly community call for those who may be joining on this call first time. So in the SharePoint PnP, we have quite a lot of actions and quite a lot of things happening. So we do have a monthly community calls, which is essentially this call where we are. We do have 2 bi-weekly special interest group calls, one for SharePoint Framework and one for PnP Core and PowerShell. And these are working in a bi-weekly basis. In a way that, and I didn't update the dates, sorry for that, in a way that it's this week it's the PnP Core PowerShell special interest group, and the next week it will be the SharePoint Framework special interest group. And the whole point of this special interest group calls is that we will always have time for Q&A. There's always discussion time, and they're more, let's say, open from a presentation perspective. And there's always community demos there as well. And then if you have any random questions and discussion points, you can always fall back on the tech community, SharePoint Developer Tech Community group, and have a discussion there. There's a lot of active people helping on the questions on there as well. Now, before we go to the actual things, what has happened in a month, and this kind of relates on that one, I put it in the release notes, which went live today due to my timing issues. I wasn't able to get it out yesterday. But we're gradually starting to scale the PnP initiative more and more. And one of the first things which will happen is that we'll start taking the OneDrive people, OneDrive engineering in the PnP as well. So we're going to expand on that side as well. So if you're contributing on the OneDrive side, you will get acknowledged and listed in the PnP communications as well. And then we're looking into increasing the reusable components community efforts. So essentially there will be reusable components and controls mainly for the SharePoint Framework side in the future. And also the tooling automation work will start during the summer and autumn time. We actually have a repo for that one already, but we're gradually starting moving on that one. The key point here to kind of see and understand is that we are gradually increasing and scaling how we actually work together within the PnP, together with community and engineering as well. Already during this month, we kind of have 4 new MVPs closely involved in the PnP initiative. So we do have the classic MVPs in the PnP core team, who are Erwin van Hunen, Paolo Pialorsi, Radi, Waldek, and Elio, who've been around for a long time. Erwin, by the way, being the first one of the MVPs a while back when he started contributing on the PnP PowerShell. But during the May, there's 4 new persons who are closely involved who have specific responsibilities in the PnP as well. So Spencer Harper is now taking over the responsibilities of coordinating the MIMSync work from SharePoint Engineering. So the MIMSync for synchronizing, it's the PowerShell scripts for the on-premises SharePoint 2016 user profile synchronization thingy. And Spencer is coordinating that in the PnP Tools repo. Eric Chubbs and Paul Schaffelin are coordinating the work related on Visual Studio extension for SharePoint Framework. It has its own repo, and that's the one which we did a webcast with Eric and Paul as well. And Michael Svensson just moved his search query tool from the Codeplex to PnP Tools as well, and he's coordinating that effort by himself. And obviously, all of these guys are anyway contributing on the multiple samples as well. But just letting everybody know that if Spencer or Mikael or whoever starts having a discussion based on your contributions, you won't be massively surprised. So it is by design, and we are looking into expanding the team further in the future as well, because we really want to make sure that people who want to contribute, people who want to be involved with the community efforts can actually be doing that. And this is the only way we can actually scale. Because to be honest, personally, I just don't have any time anymore to scale, and Bert is running out of time and everybody else is running out of time. And the easiest way to actually be more successful in the future is to get more people involved as well. Good. So what has happened in June? So we had quite a few SharePoint Framework samples, a few on the WebParts side, and then more on the SharePoint Framework extensions. So SharePoint Framework extensions went to dev preview last Tuesday, so a week ago, and there's already quite a few samples available in the GitHub for those, well, at least as a starting point. So that's a great way of actually learning how the SharePoint extensions can be used and how they actually work. And then on the samples and guidance, so there's a nice new sample which Ron is going to show today around the portal data access layer, and this is around how to build a centralized data access layer for client-side development if you're using, even though you would be using this in on-premises. So this is not really SharePoint Framework specific, it's more around thinking through how to implement JavaScript properly. PnP Portal Internet Static Kit has a lot of new stuff as well. So Frank is going to show us today a nice setup on the bot framework. So that will be a nice demo as well. Quite a lot of new guidance on the SharePoint Framework extensions especially. And then there's the connect a secured API with Azure Active Directory. That's a nice typo on that one. But that's a nice article of explaining how can you call in a secured way from JavaScript a web API, which is secured using the Azure AD. And then there's 25 new videos around getting started with SharePoint Framework training package, and we're looking into releasing additional videos on the extensions pretty soon as well. So those are being processed in upcoming days. On the core component and engine side, there's additional capabilities, additional methods for helping, for example, adding list webhooks or supporting for client-side pages with multiple zones and sections. So you're able to create modern pages easily using managed code and then associate web parts and sections on those modern pages as well. On the core JavaScript side, the latest release will be coming today or tomorrow. So unfortunately, we do not have a specific checklist of things, what is happening, but that's going to be coming live pretty soon as well. On PowerShell side, not a massive amount of things, but some advantages, some additional capabilities on the PowerShell as well, a few new PowerShells, a few new capabilities, which will help to manage the content within a SharePoint Online. This one was probably the biggest monthly release we've been having from a participant perspective, from a community participant perspective. So I really needed to scroll down the font on the slide, and maybe in the future I need to split this into multiple slides as well. So there's quite a few external people participating on this work and this monthly release by contributing on the documentation, samples, bug fixing issues, whatever related on SharePoint development. So thank you humongously, thank you a lot on your contributions, because this way the whole SharePoint community can benefit between each other, the work with what we do, and we can be more successful together. On the Microsoft side, before we go there, on the company side, we also had quite a few companies from which we have a permission to show their logo, who are essentially providing resources by their people to work on some of the PnP assets and PnP samples. So thank you. Thank you a lot on this one as well, and we absolutely are looking into expanding this list in the future as well. The thing is that if your name is listed as a contributor and your company might be mentioned, but if we do not have your permission to use the company logo, we can't actually put it on the slide. So I need to have an explicit email on that one. That was our legal statement or legal team statement on this one. Then on the Microsoft side, we had a pretty typical set of people working on this one, which is expanding gradually as well. So a lot of internal people, a lot of SharePoint engineering people who are helping on the documentation side, helping on the samples, helping on polishing stuff what we have out there. Before we go to the actual demos, and I'm already again 1 minute over my booking time, and I do apologize on that. We will have a traditional, let's say, PnP summer break, so we won't have a specific July release. So we'll get back on the normal time frame and normal schedules from early August. This doesn't mean that we wouldn't be working during the summer. It just means that we'll take slightly more easily during the summer time frame. We'll work still in a GitHub, we'll get stuff released, but we won't have specific monthly calls, and we won't have specific other calls except the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Special Interest Group call, coordinated and hosted by Patrick Rogers. So Patrick doesn't actually want to have any vacation, so he's running that call all through the summer as well. But majority of our calendar invites are expiring by end of this month. So for example, the monthly call invites are expiring after this call. So we'll update those ICS invites within upcoming weeks, so you can actually get them to your schedule for the next autumn and next spring as well. One of the reasons why the expiration always happens like this is that the Microsoft fiscal year is between July and June, and this is always the end of the fiscal. So we kind of schedule our stuff into these fiscal cycles. But like mentioned, we won't have a July release explicitly. If we need to do any releases, if we will do, let's say, updates on the core component, we might do a release, but there won't be a monthly community call in July. The next monthly community call will happen in August. And we'll absolutely share the updated invites and everything else in the social media. So please have a look on what's happening there when we get the stuff moving again. Good. So let's move into the demo section. So let's start with Alex. Alex has two different demos which we chatted in GitHub, which he would be showing. One is around the SharePoint Framework WebParts, a React side panel, and one is around the extensions, so a field customizer. Then we'll move into Frank Cornu and doing a concrete example of a bot integration within Trent solution. That's a pretty interesting demo as well. And as a final topic, Ron Tilke is going to talk about the portal data access layer. But unless mistaken, I think I saw Alex on a call, and I promoted you as a presenter as well, so you can start sharing and take over the screen.
It's okay?
Yep, all good.
Okay, so good morning, everybody. So I'm Frank Cornu. I'm an office development MVP and founder of my own company called Echoes, based in Montreal. And today I will show you a feature in the new PnP Starter Internet version with the bot framework integration. So I will go through the end user experience, and then I will present the installation steps in detail. So let's take a look of the user experience. So first of all, you can see on my screen in preview the next version of the PnP Starter Intranet again, which will be released, I think, this summer. So this is not the same you have currently in the GitHub repository, but the behavior is the same about the bot framework integration. So first of all, why integrate a bot into a SharePoint portal? It's all about the content discovery and search experience. Let's say you are a user of your intranet and you want to search for some content. You will probably use some keywords like that. For example, if I want to search for news in the human resources category, I will type something like that. The problem is with this kind of keywords, with SharePoint doesn't know the intent behind this keyword. So to get relevant results, you will have to configure your search engine. For instance, by using query rules to promote some result and to detect some intent about the keywords. And it can be not complicated, but it can be very time consuming. So this is a fact in a SharePoint portal. It's all about the free text search. For instance, you will never see a user type something like this. For example, nobody does that, because first of all, they don't know about the KQL syntax, which is the search syntax of SharePoint, and they don't know about your search schema. So to understand, to help users to search for content, we can benefit of artificial intelligence services like Q&A Maker integrated with the bot framework, and that I will show you this right now. So to complement the search experience, I integrated a bot. So this is the little icon here, just to ask questions about the portal. So first of all, I will chat with my bot. To integrate to communicate with SharePoint, I will need to be authenticated. So for now, in the bot framework SDK, you have no SSO mechanisms. So you have to implement the OAuth2 Flow manually. So that's why I need to sign in again in my portal. So I will just sign in. And you will see this is a Node.js application implementing the OAuth Flow manually. So I will go through this step later, but for now, let's go back to the portal. So now I'm authenticated in the portal, and I will ask some question to the bot. So let's say we are in a very common situation in an intranet. I'm a new employee, so I want to know some useful information about the company and so on. So I just will type some keyword like this. And behind the scene, I use the Q&A Maker. So the Q&A Maker is just a service to build questions, to build question and answers FAQ very quickly. So I can implement some answers, some question and answer static answers, but I can also implement dynamic answers. So let's say I want to know the latest news of the portal. So if I type something like this, I can interact with the search engine of SharePoint, and I can query the search engine and get the relevant result. And those results are security trained. So that's why we need the OAuth2 Flow with delegated permission to get this kind of experience. So as you can see, this is a useful way to complete the search engine of SharePoint. So now, how we get there? So how can implement this kind of solution? So I will go through the installation. So first of all, like I said, you will need to build a Q&A maker knowledge base. So to do this, you have to go on the Q&A maker portal, a dedicated URL, and build a new knowledge base. So I will go here. As you can see, this is pretty straightforward. You can add a question and add an answer. Like I said, you can write static answers, but you can also write dynamic answers, like search queries. I use a token mechanism to detect a search query in this sample, but very quick, very quick to build. You can benefit of the text recognition of the Q&A maker service. So let's say we have some common question. We can add some alternative phrasing to detect, to help the service to detect the intent more easily. So let's say I want to add some keywords. You will have some more you have more choices to improve the intent detection. So you have first to build a Q&A maker knowledge base. Then you will have to create a new .js application or ASP.NET application to implement your bot logic. So in my case, my application is hosted in Azure. So I use a Node.js application, but you can do the same with an ASP.NET application. So in this application, you can take the existing code. I post the bot code for this solution in my own repository. So you can either fork this repository or use this repository directly as a deployment option. This is the easiest solution if you want. Just go here and sync with this GitHub repository. This is a public repository, so you can do this. Next, you will have to configure some application settings to interact with your bot and the Q&A maker service and so on. So all the detail of the app settings are in the repository I showed you earlier. So you might think why I use a dedicated Node.js application instead of the new Azure bot service. This is because I have to implement the OAuth Flow. And the Azure bot service uses an Azure function, which is a serverless application. And in my scenario, I need a reply. I need to get the reply from the authorization server, and that's why I need a dedicated application to get this result. So I can't use the Azure bot service, an Azure function. So next, I will have to create a new Azure AD application under the Azure Active Directory behind my Office 365 tenant. So for this, I created a new Azure AD application with the correct permission. So in the required permission, I set to search for SharePoint Titan. You only have to set this option here. But This is the same behavior for any other APIs. If you want to communicate with the graph or some other endpoints, this is the same behavior. So I use SharePoint Online in this case, but you can use the graph endpoint as well. So the next thing is to configure the reply URL. So in my case, this is the URL of my Node.js application to get the callback of the authorization server, to get the access code and the access token for the current user. So the next thing to configure is to register a new bot on the Bot Framework portal. So here you have a special URL to register your bot. So dev.framework.com. You can add a new bot here and set up your different channels. So the bot framework works with different channels. So this is the same code with different channels. You don't have to adapt your code, for instance, for Skype for Business or Skype or Teams. This is the same code running on all channels. So in my case, I use the direct line channel. The difference between direct line and web chat, if you go with the web chat, you can integrate with your portal, but it will be an iframe. And the iframe, you can't apply CSS styles on it. With direct line, I use a special component offered by the community. So I use this, I use the Bot Framework web chat, which is a React component that you can integrate in your app. And with this component, you can apply styles on it. So this is slightly different of the web chat component. You have some configuration to do, but this is basically the component I use to apply styles. So you register your bot. In the settings here, you will have to enter some useful information. The messaging endpoint, which will be your Node.js application to route the messages. Sorry. Okay. So you configure your bot with your Node.js application. And next, you will have to configure the PnP starter intranet with this. So I go back to my solution. I have a configuration list here in the site content. And I will set up my bot. So all you have to do is to fill those values. So the bot direct line secret, the bot handle, and the bot ID. You can find this information directly in the bot profile. So the bot handle, the bot ID, and to generate the direct line secret key, you have to first add the direct line channel, but then edit this channel and get the secret key. And if you do this, you will have access to the bot directly in the solution.
This is the kind of classic way of securing the traffic between the solution consuming the bot and between the bot itself. But in this case, I think that your implementation is pretty cool on the right side and how it's behaving and working and all of that. So even the UI exposure of that one is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't know if I have time to go through the code very quickly.
I don't. Unfortunately, I think we we're running out of time to make sure that we have
understand.
the time for Alex and Ron as well. But
Yeah,
I think
no problem.
the key point is essentially this code is available. It is part of the intranet sample. You have a specific version also available in your GitHub, and this was a nice walkthrough on the experience as well. And it's a nice demo on the usefulness of the bot framework as well. So there is no doubt and interesting scenarios for that one within the intranet as well. Good, but
Good.
let's try to flip to Alex on this one, and if there's any questions, feel free to ask those questions in our window. Let's see if Alex can take over the presentation.
Great. My name is Alex Tebrintiv. I'm a lead developer in the company SharePoint List, and thank you for giving me time during this community call. Sorry that I need to reconnect. But yeah, today I'll be showing two samples. One is for client-side web parts and another one for SharePoint Framework extensions. So let's start with the WebParts sample. It's a really simple sample that shows you how to display a side panel or sidebar from the web part, like that. You can hide it from here, or you can click on close. And in web part properties, I have only one property, panel position. Let's change to left, and oops, and here we go. So really simple example. Let's go to the code to see what's happening here. The code of web part itself is not interesting. We are just rendering the main content and the panel itself and changing the state when it's needed. So let's see what's happening in the panel code. First of all, here I'm using the Office UI Fabric layer component. It's a container for my panel, and this component allows you to add your markup to the page body instead of the current React container. In our case, this container is a web part. So my panel is rendered not in a web part, but in the body of the page. And thanks to that, it was really easy to implement the functionality. Also here, I'm using standard out-of-the-box React props.children property, and it means that the content of the panel can be added as an HTML markup, and you can see it right here. This span will be displayed in the panel, inside the panel. So what about the code? The props object is really easy. We have isOpen flag to show hide the panel position property and handler of panel closing. The panel state is more interesting interface because it has two similar flags, isOpen and isVisible, and these two flags are needed to implement sliding animation as CSS transition and correctly remove panel HTML when closed. If we look at the SCSS file and transitions, like the default state of the panel has left property or right property is set to negative value. In that case, the panel is positioned outside the screen. And then when the visible class is added, the property is changed to 0 with the transition animation. In that case, we see this animation that panel is sliding outside the screen. And now I want to show you the flow to explain why we need these two flags instead of one. So for open flow, initial state of the panel is open set to false, is visible set to false, and in that case, panel is closed and no HTML is rendered at all. And then if we want to open the panel, in the first step, we are changing isOpen flag to true. In that case, panel is still closed, but panel HTML is rendered without this visible class, just in default state. Then, after some timeout, we are changing is visible flag to true, and visible CSS class is added to the panel. In that case, the transition animation is initiated, and after that, in the last state, the panel is visible on the page. And for close flow, it's actually the same. First, the panel is opened, then we are changing this visible to false to remove visible CSS class and to initiate again transition animation. And then when we change is open to false, then HTML won't be rendered, will be removed from the page. You can see it in everything like that in a render method that if state is open is false, then we're rendering nothing. Otherwise, we're rendering the panel. So these open and close flows are based on timeouts. While opening the panel is open state is set to true immediately. But then in component did update, we are setting the timeout to change is visible flag a little bit later. As I mentioned, it is needed to initiate the transition animation. And the same for the close flow. When we are dismissing or closing our panel, we are changing is visible to false, and then we're setting the timeout with like duration of the animation to change is open to false only after the animation is done. Most of the ideas of this implementation was borrowed from Office UI Fabric model component, which provides similar flow to open and close dialogues with animation in React. And I think that's it for this sample. And
while we are moving there, actually, Alex, just let me reiterate something what I said on this one and clarify why I ask Alex to actually show this. Because for me, that what Alex built here, yes, it's super simplistic web part, which is just showing a panel, but it's a great building block. And that's essentially what we want to have related on the PnP samples as well. This is an awesome building block for the scenario that, hey, I want to have a right side or left side panel, and I want to have some sort of a setting. Plus, the same implementation does work also using the application customizer. Just as well, you can hook in this kind of a functionality to application customizer, which is then embedded on the page in the header or footer, and then you can set some additional settings or whatever the panel is actually showing. So great building block, no doubt.
True, thank you. And yeah, now let's go to field customizer. Yeah, first I want to say that it's really cool that the community has been heard and the dev team released these extensions. For example, for our company as ISV, it's really big step forward using SharePoint Framework, and of course we're looking forward to new features and new extensions. Yeah, so in this example, I just want to show the field customizer, and it illustrates the usage of Office UI Fabric slider component. And additional cool feature here is permission-based inline editing. Here in the browser, I'm logged in as an admin, and I can change values inline like that. Then if I refresh the page, you'll see that the values are saved, which is cool. And here I'm logged in as other user that has only read permissions for the list. And as you can see, the sliders are disabled here. So pretty easy example as well. Let's see in the code. The code of the component itself is super easy. Here I'm just using the Office UI Fabric slider with some predefined value, and just it's like a connector between the customizer and Office UI Fabric slider. And the customizer itself, there are like two main methods here. First one is on render cell, like an entry point for any of your UI, custom UI and customizations. Here I'm getting the value of the cell, ID of current list item, also checking the permissions of the current user, which is really simple with out-of-the-box properties and methods. And finally, I'm creating the slider itself for current cell. And another method is a handler of slider change event. Here in the method, I'm sending the request to the server to actually update the value of the list item, of the field in the list item. And actually, I'm sending it not exactly when the change happened, but only when users stopped interacting with the slider. Because if send this request all the time, you'll have like millions of requests while user is dragging it. So in my case, I'm just sending it after 1 second when user stops dragging the slider. And the request itself is done with the PnP.js library, which is very cool, and it really simplifies life and code. So yeah, and that's it. So super easy sample. As you can see, most of the code here is like aggregation of different libraries and features provided by Microsoft. So it's really cool that we can just combine them and use them and focus more on business values in our code. So thank you for listening. Hope this helps.
Thanks, Alex. That's a really cool feature because you have an inline editing in the README or the view mode of the list. So really cool way of showing the power of the field customizers. But Ron, you can flip on the sharing. Now you have 11 minutes. If it takes slightly longer than that, that's absolutely fine. But let's see on your schedule as well. Ron is pasting in the comments. Yes. Yep. And the screen sharing works.
Is it going?
Yep, it is going.
All right.
Take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ron Tilke. I'm a principal consultant with Microsoft Services, and I've been working on the JDP program and PnP for the past couple of years. I'm here to demonstrate the client-side data access layer sample, which is a working end-to-end implementation of the data access layer framework that was mentioned in the article series, the portal performance article series. Just a quick overview of what it is. It basically consists of a series of JavaScript-based display components. These guys respond to events, and when they deem necessary, they decide to render data. In order to do so, they ask the business data object manager for their associated business data object, and when they get it back, they bind to it and render the data. They use lazy load, standard data load optimization practices to make an efficient page load. When the business data manager gets a request for the business data object, it first looks into it asks the storage manager to see if there's a local cached copy of the data. If it gets it, it returns it back to the caller. Otherwise, it makes a back-end call to the the appropriate data service and gets the data. When it gets it back, again, it stores the local copy and then returns it to the control for rendering. The sample itself comes with a console application that makes it very easy to install. The only thing you need to do ahead of time is pre-create two site collections. One that we call the administration site collection. That's really used to hold the configuration lists that manage the content that's used by the controls. The other is the demo site collection itself. And then we assume that you have the root portal site collection available. When you fire this thing up, you simply execute the three options in order. You configure your content delivery network. You configure your administration site collection, and then you configure the demo site collection. And what the console will do is create all the necessary site columns, lists. It'll pre-create some sample data, create all of the schema that's necessary to support the application. One thing to note is that you can re-execute this console as often as you like. It will never overwrite your existing content. It just ensures that the necessary things are there. So once you run this thing, what do you get? You get 3 site collections. Again, your content delivery network site collection. We basically create a subfolder in there and we upload all the necessary files. The JavaScript files are probably the most interesting. These contain all of the control implementations along with some supporting libraries like jQuery and Bootstrap. You also get an administration site collection, and the 2 primary things in there are the global navigation configuration list and the portal configuration list, which is basically an online config file. You can think of it that way. You also get a demo site collection. At the root of this site collection, we have a company links list, configuration list. Allows you to manage links for the current site collection. You also get a local navigation configuration list, which allows you to do unique links for the current web. You also get a subsite, and it's simply there to provide web scoped configuration. They both webs pretty much do the same thing. A quick look at the configuration list, we'll see that it's basically link text, link URL, and a display order. Okay. Once you go to the page, you can visit any site or any of the webs in the site collection, and you'll get this nice page. It pretty much describes everything that's going on. It's important. Let's see. We've got 6 display controls on this page that are participating in the client-side environment. We've got global navigation, which is managed by the list. In the administration list, we've got a stock ticker control that actually calls out to Yahoo Stock API. We've got a company links list control that reads the links from the root of the current site collection. And we've got local navigation links as well. We've got a wonderful looking footer. And we also have a user info control that is actually a lazy load, and it will go fetch its data when it's clicked. So I have Fiddler in tow here just to prove that things work as expected. So one of the things we want to do first is we have the option to clear our local storage. And I'm going to do that and capture the traffic, hopefully, as well here. And what we'll see primarily is that there are 4 search queries that go out, one for each of the controls, the company links, local navigation, the global navigation, and the footer. And there's also a call to the stock API of Yahoo. So this data the page has been loaded, and all of the calls have been made. If I come back and re-execute a query to the page, we should see no calls go out. So no outbound calls. The only thing we did was request the page. Okay, great. Caching works. Let's talk a little bit about the functionality, right? The cache itself allows you, or the design of this allows you to specify caching configuration for each of the controls. And the options you have for a given cache entry are which storage mode you want to use, local or session. And this basically maps to web storage, session storage, or local storage. You can choose an expiration timeout, and then you can specify a policy, either absolute or sliding. And with that, this sample varies the expiration policy on each of the controls to avoid the usual bit storm that might occur when the page is loaded. We want each of these controls expiring at their own value, which is kind of proportional to what the volatility of the data itself. So one other thing you can do is if you fire up the local tools, you can see the representation of these items in the appropriate stores. Basically, we're using a JSON representation. It's a minimal JSON representation that is independent of the request or the response schema, right? We only want to store the data that needs to be rendered. We don't care about all of this, the search result goo or the stock API goo that comes back that might be supporting the response. We've got the stock. There is a bug that's been corrected, but currently the stock information is being put in the wrong cache, but that's just a configuration setting. Actually, it's left in as an exercise for the reader. You can figure that one out and fix it. Oh, I'm sorry. What I wanted to show was the console. So if you actually load that up, you'll get some pretty verbose diagnostics that kind of explain how things are going on the page as it goes and runs. Okay, I'm not on the fastest connection right now, but okay, here we go. So what basically you can see the logic it follows. It looks in the cache. If it finds it, it returns it, computes its expiration, or determines if it's expired, yes or no, and it returns it. Kind of does that for each of the items in the cache. As we go looking at them, it tells you when it's going to expire. When it does expire, actually I can force an expiration again by clearing the storage, equals 1. And you should see a bunch of corresponding logic here. The other thing, when we do the clear storage, we're only clearing the properties that are used by this application. We're not clearing out all of the O365 cache entries or anything else. You can see now that we're getting cache misses. Then we're going to call the data source. Later on down the line here, we get results, and we process them, and we create the objects. Okay, so that's kind of the functionality. Let's see, I have 2 minutes. I'll do some highlights on the code. Again, let's see, make sure we're not running. We don't need to see that. The code itself. We use a custom master page right now in the demo site collection. We only for simplification. I didn't want to mess with JavaScript embedding right now just to complicate things. But in general, we declare within the page the various elements as divs. They're empty. When the page loads, we call the constructors on the various controls. For the user info control itself, which I didn't quite demo. We have an on-click handler. You may have noticed there that we had a progress indicator when the control opened up. So we bind the on-click handler there. Within a given control itself, pretty straightforward. If it's a control that renders when the page loads, its constructor will call a common method called getContents. That method is pretty straightforward. We have some default HTML that we want to present in the event our request doesn't succeed. Before we do the request, we have the option of activating a progress indicator. This control does not do that. Once we're ready to go, we call the business data manager asking for our data object, and we provide our storage options. In this case, we're using durable storage because it's public information and we want it to last a little longer. We have a unique timeout value for this control of 5 minutes. Once we get a response, we have our response handlers. We're either going to get a success or a failure. If in the event of a failure, we're going to use the fallback HTML, which might be some static hello world text, or it might be blank, or what. If we get a success, we make sure that the object we got back is valid. We might have gotten an error, in which case we want to, again, go to the fallback HTML. If we get valid data, we simply bind to the JSON object and render the content. Pretty straightforward. Within the business data manager itself, the logic for obtaining the data for a given control is rather straightforward. When the method's called, we first have to figure out a storage key. In the event of a singleton, like the global navigation, the storage key is fairly static. In the event of objects, personal, personalized information or web-specific information, we have to basically compute unique tags for that element. So one site can store its local navigation in a different entry than the parent site. So anyway, we get the storage key. We determine if we're using storage. That not using storage is certainly an option. In the event that we do, we ask the storage manager for the object. If it's present and it hasn't expired, we return it. Otherwise, we set out to make the call. So the business data manager abstracts the details of making the call. In this case, we're using the search REST API against a given list. In the event of a failure, we need to do something. So we can either return a null object which says, sorry, we couldn't do anything, in which case the control takes makes the decision on what to display. Or if we were lucky enough to get some data, you notice that we store the data, and in case it's false or it's been expired, we use that as a fallback in the event of a failure. It's better to show stale data than no data, the thinking there. Again, if we have any sort of failure on the call, we make sure that if we have stale data, we'll attempt to use that. We'll actually recache it. We don't want to have cascading connection failures. If this is something that's intermittent, okay, we'll just cache the item for a few more minutes and we'll try again later. You can certainly enhance this logic to do exponential decay and all of that good stuff, but I'm doing this for free, so you're welcome to help. In the event we actually get a valid response from the backend data source, we simply set out to parse that response and create the minimal JSON representation of the relevant data that needs to be rendered. So in this case, we're simply looking for the link text and the link URL. We create a little JSON object that has an array of link nodes in it, and once we've computed that, we again, if we're using storage, we stick it into this, we ask the storage manager to store it in the appropriate cache, and we return it to the user, and all is well. So the storage manager itself simply interacts with the web storage, and basically it's storing and retrieving items from the cache, and does some of the additional information about if we're using a sliding expiration, it'll update the accessed on. If the item's expired, we return information indicating that it's expired, but we also return the item. So in case they want to present a stale data object, they can. We also clear the cache. I'm not sure if this is, the assumption here is if it's expired, it's going to be updated. Maybe this is an unnecessary churn on the store, but I'd rather not have wasting precious resources there, so we do clear it. Okay, so 4 minutes over.
Not too much actually, Ron. That's absolutely fine. Everything. And those who needed to stop or drop away, they can always have a look on the recording as well. But I think the key point here is that it's a great implementation demo and reference implementation on how to build the data access layer in JavaScript. Obviously, there's multiple ways of doing this. There's multiple patterns and all of that. But here's something which people can actually pull down and have a look on it. It works on a classic. It works on-prem. It's kind of a reusable pattern which people can learn how to build their components, JavaScript customizations in the same way. Just for the sake of closing the call, I'm going to flip back on the slides because we're already 5 minutes above the time. But like mentioned when we start the call, we do not have a monthly community call in July. We will have a monthly community call, next one in August. I will update this, the timing, the ICS or invites during the summertime, and we'll do social media communications. If you do remember AKMS, SP, PnP, we will update all of the invites properly there within a few weeks. So we'll start again the PnP calls and cycles, except PnP calls and cycles in the August timeframe, except for the one exception, which was Patrick Rogers is running the special interest group for SharePoint Framework and PnP.js Core all around the summer as well. But thank you everybody for joining. Great work on the demos. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Ron, for the demos. We do know that it's a tough thing to have 15 minutes, 20 minutes to do a quick demo on something which is relatively complex. But I think people got the idea, and that's what this is essentially for. Getting the idea, getting excited, getting the interest on the sample, getting the interest on the technology, and then they can investigate that more, and we can then provide additional guidance and help on the social media or in the community channels. But thank you everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. Thank you for watching the recording if you're watching this as a later on in YouTube. And let's absolutely stay in touch and have a great summer if we don't be in touch before the August. Thank you.